besties, welcome back to my book channel. Today we're going to be talking about exactly how I annotate my books. Annotation is something that I have gotten into in the last few years, and it's something that I just absolutely love to do. It's such a beautiful way for me to interact with my books more closely. And so throughout this video, I wanted to talk to you guys about not only why I annotate, but also how I annotate, get into the supplies that I use, and also just generally share some tips and strategies if annotating is something that you guys want to get into. For the sake of this video, I did pull off of my shelves some of my favorite books that I have annotated, and I just wanted to show you guys what annotating looks like when all of your books are done. These are some of the books that I've more thoroughly annotated and more thoroughly tabbed, and I just absolutely love the way that they look together and just the experience that I get when I go back in and open up these books. And lastly, feel free to skip around throughout this video if there are different parts that interest you more. Go ahead, skip around if you want to just hear the supplies or my strategies. I encourage you to do so. So let's get into the first part of this video, which is talking about why I annotate my books. The first reason that I personally love to annotate is because I feel like it forces me to read my books more closely. I definitely can fall into the trap of reading books really quickly, and then a week later I've forgotten almost every single thing that I read in that book. And when I'm annotating a book, I am not only paying a lot more attention, but I feel like it also improves my retention, and it also just feels like I'm having a conversation with the book that I'm reading. Not only am I consuming it, but I'm responding back to it. I'm writing my thoughts in it. I'm underlining, I'm highlighting, I'm really focusing on the things that I love about that book. Another thing that I love about annotating is it feels like a window back into the person that I was when I read that book. Personally, I'm the kind of person who reads my favorite books over and over again. And so one book that I wanted to show you guys in this video is my copy of Love in Other Words. And so I have now read this about 3 times. The first time I read it, I did not annotate it. The second time I created an annotation key. And the third time that I read it, I went in with a pink highlighter to just generally highlight any new things that stood out to me. And so I just love that when I read this book, I feel like I'm taking a step into the past and seeing who I was at different times that I read this book. And then it ends up being so beautiful when it's all done. Going off of that, every time you read a book again, I feel like you have different things to add to the conversation. For instance, the person that I am, I'll definitely pick up on things today that I wouldn't have picked up on maybe 5 years ago. And that's also something that I love to keep track of and just have documented in my books. And lastly, I love that in annotated books, you can go back to your favorite moments at any time without having to look for them very hard. Sometimes I love to just pick up a book off my shelf and skim through the book. And if I wanted to find some of my favorite moments in some of the Throne of Glass books, for instance, these are some of the books from that series that I have annotated, I immediately know which tabs to look for, so I could just open the book up and go back and reread some of my favorite parts without having to like skim or Google on what page does XYZ happen. The next thing I want to talk about is choosing which books to annotate. I feel like this is something that I don't hear people talking about very often, but I definitely do not annotate every single book that I read. In fact, I would say I'm very selective with the books that I do decide to annotate. There's a few different ways that I decide on which books I want to basically write all over. And the first type of book, I think it's been made plainly obvious in this video so far, is rereads. If I'm rereading a book, it goes to show how much I really loved that book. And so when I read a book a first time, you don't necessarily know how you're going to feel about it. And so upon a reread, these are the times where I know what to look for. I know what I loved in that book. I want to like mark it up and have a very personalized experience with that book. Number 2 is favorite authors. So maybe you have a favorite author who's releasing a new book. If I already have some level of confidence that I'm going to love the book that's coming out because I love that author already, I do feel like it makes a book a good option to potentially annotate because you know yourself, you know the author, you know how those books make you feel, and if they're the type of books that you might want to write all over. And along with that, I would also recommend annotating books in a series. So if you're continuing a series, this is another instance where you kind of know how a book is going to make you feel, or you know that you are really emotionally connected to that world. And so you don't have to risk writing all over a book that you aren't going to like. And finally, the last type of book that I annotate is usually a book where I've made it 50 pages in, or I've made it 100 pages in, and I realize that this is a book that I'm just absolutely obsessed with. And at that point, I will start annotating. And so one example of that, which is a book that I annotated that I was reading for the first time, was Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Right at the beginning of this book, I didn't know if I wanted to annotate it, but because I was loving everything that I was reading for the first, I don't know, small chunk of the book, immediately I switched over and decided that this is going to be a book that I annotate, and I want to make a key for it, and I want to just absolutely love every single moment of it, slow myself down, all of that good stuff. That's probably the final way that I decide if I want to annotate a book or not. I did also just want to say here that remember that when you annotate a book, the resell value of your book goes down. And also, I don't necessarily want to read someone else's annotated book, if that makes sense. So I do recommend being somewhat careful with which books you decide to write all over, because you couldn't sell them back to a bookstore, and you can donate them to a thrift store, but the person that picks it up next might not love that you have written all over that book. So that's just something that I would keep in mind when deciding to annotate. These are books that I never, ever, ever want to get rid of. And I know that because I annotated them. Next, I want to talk about what supplies I use. Some people are really heavy-handed with their annotating, but I think I definitely err on the side of minimalism. And so my number one top thing that I use when annotating my books is colored tabs. I don't always like to underline things. I don't always want to get super nitty gritty, but my favorite thing to do is to look for specific things and mark them with a tab. I will get into the technicalities of this a little bit later, but you can get packs of tabs on Amazon or honestly any office supply store. I'm actually running dangerously low on my annotation supplies right now because I've quite literally used them all, but you can get different muted color packs, and I really love that because I think it's extra aesthetic. And so these are two examples of a muted blue and a muted purple that I have remaining. Half of them are gone. You can also get more vibrant tabs like this. These are just from the Post-it brand. I don't like these quite as much, but because I'm so low on annotation supplies, I am almost entirely through these ones as well. And these I actually got recently from Papier in a package that they sent me, but I absolutely love how these look, and they're little patterned plaid polka dot star tabs. I think these are so cute, and I will definitely be using them on a book that I annotate soon. Also, I'll try to link as many supplies as I can in my description box now that I think about it. Next, I definitely, depending on the book, use pens. I love to write in the margins. I love to ask questions. I like to make predictions about what's going to happen in the book. And my favorite brand of pen to use is the Pilot pens. Specifically, I have the Pilot G2s. The number that goes after the name is an indicator of how thick the pen actually is. So how thick that line is going to go onto your paper. And when it comes to my everyday life, my favorites are the Pilot G2 7s. I think these are really great for just writing in a journal, but this pen is actually a lot thicker. And so when it comes to annotating, I would recommend the Pilot G2 0.38. I just find that the finer tip in the 0.38 is really good for getting in the margins and writing on the sides of your paper. If I use anything thicker, I just don't feel like it looks the best, nor can you fit as much writing. Now, something that I use to get around having limited space in the margins of my book is Post-its. I love using Post-its in my book because sometimes I don't want to physically write on the pages. I just have these purple Post-its. And so what I'll do if I'm having deep introspective thoughts about something and I want more room to write, I will just write it on the Post-it and then stick it directly on the page. And so these are really good if you have more to say than maybe you would have room for in a margin. And lastly, I don't use highlighters a ton, but I did just want to talk about the highlighters that I have because I do use them sometimes. And so the highlighters that I use are the Powerline 2500s. They're not perfect, but they are good, especially if the book that you're using has thick pages. I will say for books that are printed on really thin paper, sometimes these ones can leak through to the next page, but generally I feel like these are pretty good. And I like this pack because they're all a little bit more pastel colored. There are a lot more in this pack, but these are the colors that I like to use for annotating specifically. And then also randomly, I do have two little highlighters also from Papier. Again, not sponsored. I wish it was, in that same package that they sent me. And they're just really cute little highlighters. I feel like these are great because they're really portable. So like if I'm on the go, I can just chuck these in my bag and they don't take up like any room because there are so many. Before I dive into the technical how I annotate my books, I did just want to mention that signups for my mail club for the month of April are open. If you guys are unfamiliar with me or my channel, or this is maybe the first video that you're watching from me, I actually run a mail club for readers where I send my subscribers an envelope in the mail every single month that contains bookish goodies. This is my letter from the month of February, and inside we had the cutest floral little vintage bookmark for love, a word game. This month it was a little word search, and it was also floral themed for February, and we had the answer key on the back. My pride and joy is the newspaper that I send everyone every single month with things that are going on in the bookish world, most notably new releases that are coming out in that month. So these were 6 books that were coming out in February that I thought my subscribers should keep an eye out for. And then also just other things going on in the bookish world on the back. Again, in February, I talked about the Wuthering Heights film, some romance book recommendations, and I had some book trivia. And finally, a personal letter from me that's basically a personal essay on something reading related. And so if you guys are interested in becoming a part of my meal club where I send you a letter from my home to your home and we focus on slowing down and reading and being offline, the Cozy Reader Club will be linked in my description box down below. And trust me when I say the next couple months are going to be really, really good. But I think that's it from me. Let's get back to how I annotate. I do feel like at this point we have reached the meat of the video, which is how I actually annotate. And this is definitely a very personal experience. It really depends a lot on who you are, what you value in your books, what types of books you're going to be reading. And so I think that's the first part of this process, is asking yourself, what do you value in your books? What do you look for? This could be character development. This could be beautiful quotes. This could be developing a beautiful, intense fantasy world, the world building that's there. Thinking about what you like in your books and what is worth your time to highlight, to underline, to tab, I think is the great first step. The next thing I like to tell people is this experience is also very dependent on the genre of book that you are reading. And so in my case, for instance, when I went through and annotated An Ember in the Ashes, which is a YA fantasy series, what I was annotating in this book was very different than what I was underlining in Happy Place by Emily Henry. In a book like this, I'm looking for world building. I'm looking for small tension in the romance. Whereas in this book, I was looking a lot more at the character dynamics between the entire cast of characters. I was looking at the character development in our 2 main characters. I was looking a lot at her descriptions of the setting and the quotes in this book. And so what I look for in books like this are very, very different from each other. If you are annotating a fantasy book, you might want to look for world building, quotes, character development, emotional moments, happy, sad, scary, moments that got your heart racing, moments where information is revealed, moments where you might have been surprised, moments where you're making a guess or a prediction. Whereas in a romance, you might want to underline spice, you might want to underline yearning, you might want to underline something happy or sad. You might want to take a close look at the character development going on between our 2 main characters. In a romance, I'll often have an entire tab devoted to our female main character and another tab devoted to our male main character, or like whoever the 2 main characters are. In a classic, you might want to take more of a literary approach. You might want to have different tabs for metaphors, similes, a tab for historical moments that kind of contextualize the time that the book was written in. And in a thriller, you might want to underline moments where you were surprised, or you might want to underline a moment where they're giving you crumbs of information. I think you guys can see that what you're looking for in each book is going to be very, very different, but hopefully that gave you some tips and tricks for what to specifically look for in the book that you're currently reading. There's 2 ways I think to make your key. In my case, I use a Post-it, different color tabs to associate with different things. I think you can either decide before you start the book what you want to look for, like 5 main things that you want to look for. In this fantasy book, I decided right from the beginning that I wanted to look for world building and associate it with a purple tab, quotes and parts I like with a red/maroon tab, character development with gray, romance with blue, and plot points with this like mustard color. So I decided right from the get-go that those were the things that I wanted to look for. But as I read this book, I realized that there were more things that I liked. And so I kind of extended my key and I made little notes of other things that I was looking for, and I just generally underlined those. But you do not have to decide what your key is going to be before you start the book. I will often start reading, realize what I'm liking, and make the key as I go. So those are two options that you have. You don't have to know for sure going into it, but if you do know going into it, that's great too. And for your key, this is really straightforward, but what I like to do is associate very specific color tabs with different things that I'm looking for. So as I said before, I might say character development is this dark purple, but romance is this light purple. You could do it with tabs. You could also do it with a highlighter. And then in the actual book itself, I will tab the section of the book where I found that feature. And then if I'm really loving the book, I'll go at it with a pen or a highlighter and underline the specific section that I'm referring to with the tab. That is how I like to annotate my books. I know this was very top level first glance. So if you guys want a deeper dive into how I annotate my books, definitely let me know. I just wanted to kind of test the waters and see if this is the kind of video that you guys would be interested in. And again, if you guys are interested in receiving a letter going analog in 2026 and just having something fun to look forward to in your mailbox every single month that encourages you to read and disconnect from this online technological world that we're living in, I am going to link my mail club in the description box down below. And as always, if you made it to this point in the video, comment down below the pen or like something annotation related. Let's go pen. I think that's going to be it for me. I hope you guys are having a great day and a great reading month, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.